Today we'll be talking about strings. We're going to be doing two parts, methods of a string class, and we're going to be doing comparing strings, which is different from comparing integers and like numbers. So let's begin by taking a look at methods of a string class. First, we have length. Length returns an integer corresponding to the number of characters in the string. So basically, if you have AB space D, it will return 4. A, B, space, and D. Those are the 4 characters in that string. Spaces do count as a character. Next, we have isEmpty. Returns true if the string length is 0. Returns false otherwise. So it's basically a different way of doing length. If you, instead of doing length, checking if it's 0, you can just use isEmpty. Next, we have a substring, int start, int end. This returns a string, a substring of a string, which starts at a position and ends one character before the end of the position. Next thing, we have similar, int start, just a substring with int start. Returns a substring of a string, which starts at a position and extends to the end of the string. Next, we have two lowercase. Basically returns a copy of a string with all lowercase letters. And on the other hand, we have two uppercase, which is exactly the opposite. It just returns a copy of a string with all uppercase letters. Trim just removes all leading and trailing spaces. So before the string and after the string, if there's any spaces, it will be removed. Then we have return a string. We have replace first, which returns a string with the first occurrence of str replaced by str2, which is string 1 replaced by string 2. Next, we have replace all, similar. It replaces every single occurrence of a str, which is replaced by str2. So let's dive into these examples. First of all is length. So we can do a print for str dot length. Which should not be surprised, it will be 0 because str is nothing. Now let's change that. Str is going to be equal to hello. And now it returns 5. Now let's modify this to say hello world. Take a look at this. Now it says 11. So we have 5 characters in hello, 5 characters in world, and space customs 1, 2, so we get a return of 11. Next, we have isEmpty. So let's take a look. str is empty. Let's take a look. Now it says true because it is empty. Now if we were to change this, now it says false because the string became hello world, and now it's checking if it's empty. Not, it says false. Next, we have a substring. Let's do the thing, same thing. str dot substring, and then we can do start and end. But since they're not been initialized, let's do this. Start equal to 6 and end equal to 11. Okay, let's take a look. We have 6 and 11. What it does is it goes to the 6th place, which is a space, and it goes to the last, which is the 11th, and we just get the hello world. And on the other hand, we have the same thing, string just start, so we do the same thing, str dot substring, and we can just do start. And since it starts on 6, it'll give us the same thing. We can change that to 7, and then it will just continue from where I left off. So let's change this to 2. And as you can see, it starts and ends at a certain position, but if we change this one, the other substring, as you can see, stops at a certain point. This one keeps going till the end of the string. Next, we have two lowercase. let's do this. And let's do the other one. Take a look at these two. So now as you can see, we have hello world, even though we had H capitalized, made them all lowercase. And on the other hand, we have hello world, which is all capital letters, even though we had lowercase letters. And let's take a look at trim. There you go. So now we have a bunch of spaces that are unnecessary in our string. So we can just do this. Trim. And now, as you can see, it removes all the spaces on each end. Right, next we have replace first. What this will do is we'll replace only one. It will replace it one time. So let's do this. And we can do str dot replace first. And let's say hello with str2. In this case, str2 is a. So now since our string is hello with a bunch of spaces, it will replace hello with a. But since we didn't do trim on it, you still have the spaces, and you have a. Similar, same thing we can do with the spaces. We can replace all spaces with a. So now we have hello, and all spaces have been replaced. Or just the first space have been replaced. This is the same thing, but it will replace all of them. And we'll just do this with str2. Take a look at that. And as you can see, all the spaces that we had right here, we had 3 spaces there and 3 spaces there, all have been replaced with a. What we could do is just make it empty. And that does the same thing, removes all spaces from the entire sentence. So next we'll be looking at comparing strings. Come back to strings. Now we'll be looking at how to compare strings. First thing to mention is strings cannot be compared in the same way numbers can. A string cannot be compared using operators such as equals equals, greater than, or less than. Instead, we use a method from the string class. First one being equals, string str. What this will do is it will compare the two given strings based on their data type, or data and content of the string. If all content of both strings is the same, it will return true. If all characters or some characters do not match, then it will return false. Same thing goes for equals ignore case string str. In this case, it will ignore capitals and lowercase. So it's basically the same thing. Next, we have compare to. What compare to does, returns 0 when str is the same as a string. A negative integer is going to be returned when str comes alphabetically after the string. And a positive integer is going to be returned when str comes before the string. Note that uppercase and lower cases are considered different. Same thing goes for compared to ignore case string str. The exact same thing, but the difference between lowercase and uppercases are going to be ignored. Next, we have index of string str. Returns the integer corresponding to the location of the first occurrence of the string. str in the string. Otherwise, -1 is returned. Note that the first letter in the string is considered index 0. Returns the integer corresponding to the location of the last occurrence of str in the string. Otherwise, -1 is returned. So it's the same thing as index of, but it works in reverse. Starts with string str, returns true when the string begins with str, returns false otherwise. And same thing goes for ends with, but in reverse, returns true when the str ends with str, or string ends with str, and returns false otherwise. So now let's just begin by taking a look at a few examples. So we have a system.out.print, and let's make our variable called we already have variables. str and make that hello. And str2. Of course, str in this case is going to be equal. It symbolizes string. And there are two strings, and now let's compare them. We can do str dot equals, and then compare that to str2. This should return true. If we were to change something about str2, returns false. So now let's do this. This is hello without ignore case. So now let's do a similar thing. str equals, and then we can do ignore case str2. And this should return true because the case in this case don't matter, so returns true. If we're to change something about the letters in it, it's going to be false. Next, this is compared to, and it's very similar to the equals. So let's take a look at these. So str.compare to str2. Now let's do the other one as well. str dot compare to ignore case str2. So let's take a look. One of them gives us -32, and another one gives us 0. As you can see, very different answers because of just one little capital. Now let's say we change this to a lowercase. They're both equal. Change this to a capital, and let's change this to a O, let's say. As you can see, it gives us a -10. Right, let's moving on. This is the index. Let's take a look. This will return an integer, give us a value. So we can do str dot index of, and just to mention, this is probably one of the most useful ones because it gives us the exact position of a certain character. So let's take a look. 1. Don't remember what I said before about index. Note that the first place of the character in the string is going to be 0, and it adds on from there. Since hello, or in this case, this one, hello, E is actually second, but because it starts on 0, it's actually 1. And same thing for this. Let's say L, because we have 2 of them. And it will count the last one. What we can do is type in str dot index of, or should I say last index of, and let's say, oops, instead of that we'll just put L. Now this will give us 3, right? 0, 1, 2, and 3. And then if we do L here too, you'll see that it says 2 and 3. So 0 and then 2, 3. Next we have starts with, and let's do str dot starts with, and let's do he, and this should give us true. If we were to change this to lowercase, false. So it is case sensitive. Ends with, for the comparing strings, str dot ends with str2. Now let's take a look how that will look. And let's, instead of that, let's do hello. See, that's true. Switch that around. Let's say he, and that's now false. Just the same thing, but in reverse. And in conclusion, I want to say thank you for watching, and see you next time.